Have you ever been in, a tricky social situation, maybe at work, maybe somewhere else, and just wondered what's really driving people? What are their underlying motives?
Oh, definitely. It's that feeling of uh, trying to understand why some people seem to just glide through wielding influence while others really struggle.
Exactly. And it's often not about just what people do, but the why behind it, right?
Absolutely. Understanding the why can completely change how you see things, how you interact.
Well, that's precisely why today we're diving into a really fascinating and, yeah, pretty controversial book. Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power came out back in 1998.
And it's had this huge influence ever since.
Huge. So our mission here isn't just to, summarize it. We want to really unpack its core ideas, look at that famous Machiavellian tone everyone talks about, and
Yeah.
figure out why it's still such a go-to resource in business, leadership, even just personal strategy.
Yeah. It's kind of become a modern classic in those circles.
It has. And honestly, diving back into it, what struck me is how relevant these historical patterns still feel. Our goal is to pull out the key insights for you, the really important nuggets, so you get the essence without needing to read all, 450 pages?
It's a dense one.
Yeah.
And look, it's important to get what Green's doing. He frames it not just as here's how to grab power, but also, maybe more importantly,
Mm-hmm.
as a guide to understanding power dynamics so you can navigate them and, crucially, protect yourself within them.
Right, so it's presented as this kind of self-help slash strategy guide, 48 specific laws for getting, keeping, and defending your influence.
Exactly. And the way he makes these laws stick is through stories, historical anecdotes,
Yeah, those are really memorable. He pulls from everywhere, doesn't he? Politicians, military figures, royalty.
all through history, philosophy, literature. You've got tales from ancient China, Renaissance Italy, European courts, even like Hollywood backstabbing.
That historical element is definitely a big part of the appeal. It makes these abstract laws feel grounded.
And the structure he uses for each law reinforces that. It's very consistent, almost like a template for each chapter.
Yeah, talk about that structure. How does it work?
Okay, so for every law, you first get the law itself stated clearly, like, law one, never outshine the master.
Okay.
Then comes the judgment, like a short summary or the main idea. After that, you get the transgression of the law.
Ah, the cautionary tale, what
Yeah.
not to do.
Exactly. A historical example where someone broke the law and, well, things didn't go well for them, usually pretty dramatically.
Okay.
Then the flip side, observance of the law. That's the success story. Someone who followed the law and benefited.
So do this, don't do this with real stories backing it up. But he goes deeper than just the stories, right?
Oh, yeah. After the examples, there's the keys to power section. This is where Green really digs into the why, the underlying logic, the psychology behind the law.
Gotcha.
And for some laws, not all, there's a reversal. That's quite interesting. It tells you when the law might not apply or when doing the opposite might be better. Adds a bit of nuance.
That structure, it really makes what could be a very dense, maybe even off-putting subject feel quite approachable, like you said, digestible chunks.
It does. And it all feeds into Green's broader philosophy, which is, well, it's realist. Very much so.
When we say realist or Machiavellian in this context, what does that really mean for the listener?
Good question. It means he's looking at power dynamics as they actually seem to operate in the world based on historical patterns
Yeah.
rather than how we think they should operate based on morals or ethics.
Right, like Machiavelli or Sun Tzu in The Art of War. It's not about judging whether power plays are good or bad. It's about understanding that they happen, and if you ignore them,
You're vulnerable. Exactly. It's about survival and success in a world where these dynamics are just present.
and a lot of these laws delve into psychology, don't they? Manipulation, appearance.
Deeply.
Yeah.
Managing appearances is huge. Understanding what motivates people, subtle control, distraction, even deception. There's a big emphasis on reading people, controlling your own emotions, creating a bit of mystery around yourself.
And those historical examples really bring that to life. Figures like Louis XIV, Bismarck, Napoleon, Kissinger, seeing how these strategies played out across different times and places.
It underlines that potential universality, right? That these aren't just tricks for kings or presidents. Green argues they apply in any competitive environment. Royal courts back then, maybe corporate boardrooms or political campaigns today. Anywhere there's ambition, envy, rivalry.
So fundamentally about navigating those tricky social dynamics, self-preservation, maybe getting ahead.
Yeah, the themes kind of weave together to offer this, Well, this framework for understanding human interactions strategically,
Mm.
recognizing patterns.
A kind of cheat sheet for human nature, maybe.
In a way, yeah. And that helps us pull out those nuggets we were talking about.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's dive into a few specific laws to give everyone a real taste. What's a classic green law? How about Law 1? Never outshine the master.
Ah, yes. Classic. The core idea here is simple. Making superiors feel insecure is dangerous. Even if you are more brilliant, make them feel like they are.
So it's about managing their ego, basically. Playing the game of hierarchy.
Pretty much. It suggests that perceived comfort often trumps raw talent for those in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Subtly dimming your own light sometimes.
I think we've all seen versions of that play out, haven't we? Okay, what about Law 3? Conceal your intentions.
This one's about keeping people guessing. If they don't know your real goal, they can't effectively block you or prepare counter moves, keep them in the dark, keep them off balance.
That sounds quite calculating. And it seems like it might clash with another law, Law 6. Court attention at all costs. How does that work? Isn't courting attention the opposite of concealing things?
That's a great point, and it highlights where you need to use judgment. It's not about blindly following one rule. Grene would argue it's about strategic application.
Okay.
You court attention generally to build your reputation, to be seen, to exist in people's minds. Visibility equals power, right? If you're forgotten, you're irrelevant. But when it comes to specific plans or maneuvers, then you conceal your intentions to maintain that tactical advantage. It's about being adaptable, fluid, not rigidly stuck on one approach.
Makes sense. Knowing when to be visible and when to be secretive. Okay, another one that always sparks debate. Law 15, crush your enemy.
Totally.
Yeah, this is one of the really controversial ones. Grene argues that showing mercy to an enemy you've defeated is often a mistake.
Why is that?
Because, he says, they might recover and seek revenge later. Mercy can be interpreted as weakness. So if you strike, strike decisively. No half measures. Incomplete victories can bite you back.
Oof. Okay, definitely ruthless.
Yeah.
How about Law 33? Discover each man's thumbscrew.
This law is all about leverage. It suggests everyone has a vulnerability, a hidden insecurity, a secret desire or fear. Find that thumbscrew, and you gain influence over them.
That sounds potentially manipulative.
It absolutely can be. The underlying idea is that understanding people's hidden drivers, what really makes them tick, is a source of power.
You can almost see why people find the book so compelling, but also kind of chilling. Exactly. And one more, maybe a bit more philosophical. Law 48. Assume formlessness.
Formlessness, like water.
Precisely like water.
Okay.
Grene argues that being predictable makes you vulnerable. If you're rigid, people know how to attack you.
So be adaptable, change shapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flow around obstacles. Constantly reinvent yourself. Don't let anyone pin you down or figure you out completely. Predictability is a liability. Elusiveness is power.
Wow. Okay, so hearing these laws, think about it for yourself. How might these ideas, even the uncomfortable ones, apply to situations you've seen or been in? You don't have to like them or use them.
Right.
But just recognizing these dynamics might change how you understand things.
And these examples really show both the strategic thinking and why the book gets criticized, don't they? Which means we should probably talk about the strengths and weaknesses more directly.
Agreed. Let's start with the strengths. What makes it so enduring? For me, the writing style is definitely one. It's very engaging, almost dramatic.
It really is. Vivid prose. And you mentioned the historical richness earlier. That's a huge strength. The sheer variety and memorability of the anecdotes. They make the laws feel real, not just abstract theories.
And beyond the stories, there is genuine strategic insight there, wouldn't you say? It offers perspectives on social maneuvering, on influence that feel, well, practical, even if harsh.
Yeah. You start recognizing these patterns in the real world.
Yeah.
And that leads to another strength.
Yeah.
It feels universally applicable. The principles, even if drawn from history, seem relevant to modern life beyond just politics or big business.
Mm-hmm. And finally, it's just undeniably thought-provoking. It forces you to think about uncomfortable questions. Morality, ambition, survival in competitive settings. It challenges your assumptions.
Okay, but then there are the criticisms. And they were significant. The big one is obviously the tone. Amoral, cynical.
Yeah, that it seems to promote manipulation, deceit, ruthlessness without much, if any, ethical filter.
Exactly. It describes how to do these things, often effectively, but doesn't really engage with whether you should. It's like describing gravity. It just is.
Right. A description, not necessarily a prescription.
Perhaps. Another criticism is the evidence. Those historical anecdotes are compelling, but are they proof? Critics say they can be cherry-picked to fit the law. It's historical interpretation, not hard science.
Fair enough. And that connects to the potential danger, right? That this advice, in the wrong hands or taken too literally without empathy.
Could lead to really toxic behavior.
Yeah.
You might gain power in a narrow sense, but destroy relationships and trust along the way. Alienate everyone.
Lose more than you gain, ultimately.
Quite possibly. And there are potential contradictions, too, like we touched on with conceal intentions versus court attention. It requires the reader to interpret and decide when each applies. It's not a simple instruction manual.
Which takes judgment.
Definitely. And lastly, just practically, it's long. Over 450 pages. It can feel dense, maybe a bit repetitive in places. It's a commitment.
Okay, so considering all that, the insights, the history, but also the ethical concerns and the density, who is this book actually for? Who gets the most out of it?
Well, the obvious audience is leaders, entrepreneurs, strategists, people actively seeking to understand influence, maybe gain an edge.
Makes sense.
But also, surprisingly perhaps, fans of history and philosophy find a lot here. The stories themselves are fascinating, and Grene connects them to broader patterns of human behavior.
And you mentioned artists, creatives earlier.
Yeah, it's often recommended for people navigating competitive social landscapes like Hollywood, the art world, music. Anywhere, reputation, alliances, and subtle influence really matter.
So basically, anyone operating in what you might call a cutthroat environment could find it illuminating, or maybe just anyone interested in the underlying mechanics of power.
I think that's fair. It could be someone in corporate leadership, politics, entertainment, or even someone just trying to better understand the dynamics in their own workplace or social circles. So maybe you're listening and thinking, yeah, I need to understand this stuff, even just to protect myself.
Okay, so final verdict time. Where do we land on the 48 Laws of Power?
We're giving it an 8.5 out of 10.
Yep.
It's undeniably provocative. It's insightful. It's unforgettable, for better or worse.
Yeah, 8.5 feels right. It delivers what it promises. A kind of brutal education in what's often called realpolitik power dynamics, stripped bare and just raw human behavior.
But, and this is the crucial takeaway, I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's a book to read, primarily to understand, to see how power operates in the world, and, importantly, to learn how to defend yourself against manipulation, not necessarily as a playbook to follow blindly.
Think of realpolitik as just the cold, hard reality of power sometimes, focusing on practical results over ideals.
Exactly. And if you read this, it makes sense to also look at its intellectual cousins, like Machiavelli's The Prince or Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
But maybe also balance it out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
For a completely different, more positive perspective on influence, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is almost the perfect antidote or counterbalance.
Good recommendation. So, to wrap up, we've journeyed through Robert Grene's The 48 Laws of Power. We've looked at its structure, its core themes, often controversial, and some standout laws. We weighed the strengths, like its historical depth and strategic insights.
Against the criticisms, cynicism, the lack of ethics, the potential dangers, the core tension is that raw look at power versus the moral questions it raises.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Even if you decide these tactics aren't for you, how might simply being aware of these power dynamics change how you see the world? Could that awareness help you navigate complex situations, protect yourself, and maybe understand people's actions, not just what they do, but why through this, let's say, unvarnished lens?
It's a powerful thought. Because knowledge of these laws doesn't have to be about manipulation. It can absolutely be a tool for self-defense, for clearer perception, and for a deeper, perhaps more realistic understanding of how society sometimes works.